In the classroom, students sit and learn, and teachers stand up to teach. A lot is at stake for both student and teacher. After slaying those giants of ignorance, intimidation, inhibition, and indifference, a teacher now faces the need to find the best methods by which to communicate. And the most effective method available might surprise you. So once teachers have begun to maximize their use of style in the classroom, what are those most effective teaching methods? There are 7 at your disposal. These methods fulfill a desire to teach with style. In this final video session, Dr. Bruce Wilkinson explains 7 methods proven to bring lasting results from your teaching efforts. This is session 6 on methodology. To join us, please turn in your course workbook to page 81. Here now with the concluding lesson on teaching with style is Dr. Wilkinson.
Nobody likes me at school, said the son. The teachers don't, and the kids don't. The superintendent wants to transfer me. The bus driver hates me. And the custodians have it in for me. I don't want to go. You have to go, insisted the mother. You're healthy. You have a lot to learn. You've got something to offer others. You're a leader. Besides, you're 49 years old. You're the principal. You have to go to school. That's a great one. A 10-year-old said, if school's so great, why do they have laws to make us go? We're trying to make it so you don't need laws, no matter what you teach, that people come because they want to be a part of it. And this is the last of 6 parts on teaching with style. We want to thank you for being a part of these 6 parts, for being a part of the ministry together. And we hope as we've shared these ideas that your understanding is clarified about what style is and how important it is, and that God has incredible style. And if you ever released yourself to copy God's style, your life and your students' lives would never be the same. But now we'd like to move to the last and the most advanced, and these are the methods of teaching. This is when you use more advanced techniques, and we're going to start with the simplest ones and move to the most advanced ones. There are dozens and dozens of methods of teaching. We're only going to handle 7 of them. We're going to give you the 7 ones Jesus, it appears to me anyway, uses the most in the 4 Gospels. And by the time you're done, you're going to say, well, I never would have guessed that. You're going to be surprised a couple times, as I was when I went from Matthew 1 all the way to the end of John saying, what did Jesus do? For instance, he used variety all the time. If you took just the first 12 chapters of Luke, you would find that Jesus used 12 different methods to teach. 12 chapters, 12 different methods. Every time we use a method, we grab attention, and if we use the method appropriately, we can keep the attention. The more advanced the method is, the more the teacher can grab a hold of that whole person and get them involved, so you don't have to depend upon your physical delivery or even your personality. The involvement of the class in the method carries it. You could leave the room for 15 minutes and they wouldn't even know, because they are so involved. They are so focused on learning that they don't need you at the time to be the attention grabber and holder and captivator. It's going on. That's the best teaching there is when you've done your job and they're learning it without you. So, let's take an idea together. Let's say we took the 4 Gospels, and in my particular study Bible, everywhere where Jesus Christ spoke, it's in red letters. And obviously there's 4 books in the New Testament that records these. They're called the Gospels: Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. If you were to take all those red letters, which method did Christ use with most of what he said? He lectured. In fact, If you were to take the whole of Scripture and you were to say, I want to study every single time God communicated, what method He used? God the Father, He talked most of the time, called the lecture. He had content, He delivered it. How did Jesus Christ? He spoke and He delivered it. Most of the time, God lectured. Guess what? There's a new thought around that lectures aren't good, lectures lousy, lectures poor. That's not true. Lecture may be the most effective way to communicate information there is. That's why God the Father used it the most, and Jesus Christ overwhelmingly used it the most. But they never bored somebody with a lecture. There are 14 lectures in the book of Acts alone. Now, how do you have an effective lecture? Answer, your physical delivery is good. And you use some variety in your lecture, and some transparency in your lecture, and some humor in your lecture. You even may change the order of your lecture. You may even motivate people with your lecture. But it's still a lecture. And I'm for putting it back on the top, because I happen to believe it's the primary way to teach information. It's the issue, as Dwayne Lifton said in his book, at the heart of God's original intent was this matter of communication. Now listen carefully, this is very, very good. God designed humans to be like Himself, a communicator, one who reaches out, a builder of bridges. God designed people to talk. Thus, Christians who desire all that God has for them have a heavy stake in becoming the best possible talkers they can possibly be. Now, there's a great misunderstanding that says the original word lecture comes from the word which means to read. And as you know, in the old days, they'd write it out longhand, then they would stand and they would read it stiff. And many seminaries today, or Bible colleges, when you go, they teach you to write it out and to memorize it or to almost read it, as if that's the most effective way to deliver. Do you think Jesus Christ wrote out His sermons? Do you think the Apostle Paul wrote out his sermons? Do you think the Apostle Peter wrote out his sermons? Let me show you something that may be very, very surprising. In our country, there's a very, very famous man named Jonathan Edwards. He brought a great revival. Here's a part of a commentary about him. To enhance the emotional power of their preaching, evangelical ministers climbed into their pulpit with few notes. They thought that the less they relied on notes, the more easily they could respond to the Spirit's suggestions and their audience's needs. Jonathan Edwards wrote out his sermons word for word for the first 13 years of his pulpit ministry. After the outbreak of the Great Awakening, however, he used only spare outlines for notes. George Whitefield rarely used notes at all. Therefore, when you think of a lecture, don't think about reading. Come up with some notes, but then be fluid. Fluid. Am I fluid? Yes. What do my notes look like? That's it. That's it. I don't want to miss a point. But if you write it all out, then I can't be fluid with you, and I can't say, whoa, time for a wart. Because there's no wart in my manuscript. I feel strongly about that. Number two, stories and illustrations. Here's another shocker about this. Is it good to use stories when you speak? I used to get so frustrated after I'd preach. On the way out, the people would be shaking your hand and saying various things, but more times people would say, oh, I love that story you told about. You know what they never said? They never would say, I love those 3 points that are alliterated so nice. They're all D's. It's so nice. Nobody ever said that. One time my whole career. And I used to get so frustrated. Why do they remember the stories? The stories aren't it, till I realized something. Let's take those sermons again. Let's take those lectures and let's look at, what did Jesus do in that lecture? Was it all just straight content, or did he ever tell a story in his lecture? like I've been doing in this whole series. Lecture, story, but the whole thing's called a lecture. But I'm giving you information, story, information, joke, information, visual, information, story. Now, let's back away and say if Jesus Christ was the master teacher, and he was, and he lectured all the time, how many stories did he use? Let's say, here's his typical one-way communication. From here, all the way to here. 100% of a lecture. And you looked at all his lectures, and you saw the percentage of it was an illustration. Was it 5%, 10%, 20% stories, 30%? Because at schools, colleges, universities, they teach you, don't you dare go above 10 to 15% of stories. You're wasting time. That's what I was taught. That's what everybody's taught. Question! If God made everybody to be like that, why don't we cooperate with him? Oh, he made us remember the stories. Why didn't we come up with this creative idea and say, why don't we put our content in the story so that when they way out they say, I remember the story about what that man did with his daughter. Oh, that was wonderful. You say, oh, yes, that's my point. So go back to his stories and his lecture. What percentage of his average lecture was stories? How many say 5%, 10%? Vote once. 20%, 30%, 40%. 50%, 60%, 70%. The answer is 65% is average. That means more than half the time, what's Jesus doing? Telling stories. Therefore, take a look at the last class you taught. I guarantee you, unless you're an enlightened person or you just kind of stumbled on it, you have entirely too few stories. Now, you better make sure that your stories have a point, unless you're just getting attention. Where to get good stories? Answer, 4 sources. 4 sources. Number one, personal experience. Great way to get a story. You should be able to ask me any subject, and on the spot, I should be able to tell you a story. And I've done this in public many times. You can't tell me a subject, I shouldn't say that. Up to this point, it was always the first time. Person has been able to give me a topic, I could not, within 5 or 10 seconds, tell you a story. Personal experience, just kind of remember. Number two, it could come from history. History. So you could say, George Washington did this. Or Khrushchev did this. Or number 3, you can get something from the Bible and say, King David did this, or Saul did this. And number 4, imagination. Imagination. You make up a story to make a point. Question. How many of Jesus Christ's stories were him saying to his group, yesterday, Peter and I were walking then? Oh. What about him saying, I remember when? What about him talking about King David? Sometimes. What about him making it up? 90% plus are creative stories he made up. At the end of this session, I'm going to give you one, and I'll show you how it works. You sit back and you say, what's the point I want to make? And then you make up a story. That's why everybody loves the parables. You know why? There's no way of knowing what's going to happen next in an imagination story, because anything can happen in a story like that. Does it work? Of course it works. So use stories. More of them. More of them. I love this quote. I always find that statistics are hard to swallow and impossible to digest. The only one I can ever remember is that if all the people who go to sleep in church were laid end to end, they'd be a lot more comfortable. Number 3, visual aids. Walk Through the Bible is deeply committed to lecture, deeply committed to stories, deeply committed to visuals. The rainbow. Remember when the serpents were biting the people, what did God do? Put a snake on a pole and put it up there. Daniel's image, the donkey. I love this. Pastor coming back in on Sunday morning to the pulpit. Either this is a great visual, or he's cutting his golf game awfully close. Some of us have trouble with our visuals, and this teacher says, some of you have urged me to include more visual aids in my lectures, so here we go. Now returning to my notes. Well, does God want us to use visual aids? In the most classic passage in all the Bible about teaching, which is, in my opinion, Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 6 to 9, gives you 4 ways to teach. I teach about this in the 7 laws. It says, and these words, content, that's the content, and these words, which I command you, shall be in your notebook, in their heart, excuse me, and you shall teach them diligently. That's the first way to teach. That's what a lecture is, teach them diligently. You're in charge of it. Secondly, and talk of them, that's an informal way, when you sit down, when you walk, when you lie down, when you rise up. Third, bind them as a visual, as a sign on your hand and as frontlets between your eyes, so that you have it right here and you have it right here. When you're working, you see it. When you see me, you see a visual of what I believe. And number 4, here's a command. Here's a command. You shall write the content, write them on the doorposts of your house and then where you work, on your gates. Does God believe in visuals? Yes, all of the time. Question, last time you taught, how many visuals did you have? Now, you can have a visual that's a fancy one, like some of these. You can use a blackboard and draw stick figures. It works wonderfully. Or you can use an imagination and draw it in the minds of the people. It works just as easily. Now, Walkthrough decided a while ago to come along and make some visuals about this. And we did this to try and help people remember. So Walkthrough developed something called the Keyword Learning System, where we took the book of the Bible and the big idea and put it in a picture, a visual aid. For instance, here's a simple one. Here's the book of Genesis. What do you see unusual about the word Genesis? Yeah, it's the big N. It's the big N. What's Genesis all about? The begin, the beginnings. Some of you will get this later on. The beginnings. What are these? Numbers. And what are those numbers doing? Wandering. Wandering. So what's numbers all about? What's Genesis all about? In the beginning. That's right. Now, what is this? Ezekiel, what's he doing to those bones? He's dried those bones. He's drying those bones. And this is a really good one. This is a great one. There's a lot of these visuals that really are effective. And we have a whole series of them if you're interested. But there are 3 things to remember when you're teaching school. Know your stuff, know whom you're stuffing, then stuff them elegantly with visuals. If you were to say, what method did Jesus Christ kind of use almost without even thinking? I mean, all the time he would do this, and he would do it here, and he would do it here, and he would do it here, and he would try this, and he would change it, and he'd do it this way, and then he would ask it this way, and people would find themselves thinking, and what do you think caused people to always be thinking and wondering and talking together when they tried to deal with this method? And then he would say this, and they would, what do you think that he kept luring people's minds out of people all the time through this method? Very simple. People don't do it anymore. They used to do it a lot. It's questions. I asked you about 10 questions in a row just now. Question after question after question. The questions work? Yes. In fact, if you were to take the New Testament, every time where Christ spoke and asked a question, underline it, you'd have underlines everywhere. He used questions more than any other one thing he did. Over and over and over and over, he used questions. Questions and answers. Miss Shannon was unclear on the question and answer concept.
Okay. Do you know the answer to my question?
Next is called discussion. Discussion. If lecture is all lips, discussion is when you become all ears. Discussion is a number of different ways. It's when there is a discussion between you and the students. A discussion is when there's a student and a student going on. Or these 2 students can be having a discussion with these 2. You discuss the pros, you discuss the negatives. Now you guys switch. When you get out of it and you force them to talk about it, summarize the 3 big ideas when you're done. Let's hear it in front of the class when you're finished. Discussion's wonderful. Discussion is usually best for application, not for instruction of a lot of information. It's terrible that way. You give the information, and then you have them discuss how they use the information. You don't have them discuss coming up with the information. It's a poor usage of time. Give the information, best way you can, and then break into small groups for discussion. Do you think Christ used discussion much? All the time. Next, called drama. 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 Think of the Lord's Supper. Is that a drama? Yeah, it's a drama. Or baptism. Or the boat and the storm. The Passover. The 10 plagues. Jesus overthrowing the tables. Or you in the role of David overthrowing Goliath. If you can find a giant, that is. And remember, children in dramas can bring down the house.
And that's my little drama of the story of the Battle of Jericho.
If you're going to do that, you kind of pay attention who's a little bit more confident and extrovert, and you kind of watch them a few times till you say, I think that person there could cope with this, and then you get a little debate going. It's the best drama there is. They have to be them. They're not playing a role, they're being them. I've done it so many times. You just get this thing going back and forth. Or you say, okay, in 10 minutes, okay, I want a drama from you guys on the issue of marital conflict over money. And in 10 minutes, I want you an issue over marital conflict of sex. I want you, in 10 minutes, an issue of marital conflict over in-laws. And I want you to raise the problem so everybody in the audience says, because we're all single, we're not married yet, we're preparing you for marriage, and I want you to raise this drama so everybody in here is saying, whoa, I need to know how to do that. And you break up the group, and you sit down, have a cup of coffee, and you come back in and say, okay, who's ready? You're up. Let's go. Let's give them a hand. And guess what? They'll do it. They have to do it. And the people will applaud it because they know they're next. In-law deal. We're going to our folks for Christmas this year. I'm so sick of your mother making me help with the dishes after Thanksgiving. Oh, man, I can't believe it. Why do we always get this argued about your parents and my parents? We'll just go to my parents every Christmas and Thanksgiving, and we'll go to yours every Halloween, and from that point on, it'll be wonderful. Now, won't that be really good? I mean, you're the wife and I'm the husband. And you marry into my family. I don't marry into your family. Now, I'm having a drama by myself, right? Kind of in a humorous way. But do you understand? Why do you have to say, there are 4 primary reasons marriages have problems? Number 1, if you want to take notes, number 1 is in-laws. Number 2 is money. Let's talk about money. There are 5 problems with money. So, have one. I want to buy a boat. I'm sick and tired of not buying a boat. And I don't want to buy another microwave. We already have 1 microwave. Why do we need 2 microwaves? So, the drama. Next. And last is called project. Project. Project is the most advanced and is the most challenging. And you use it not very often. A project usually is longer than a class period and is when you send your students to go do something. When Christ sent them out 2 by 2, that was a project. Projects are often life-changing. Projects should be reflective in nature and discovery-oriented. They're to give a paradigm shift, we call it today, where a person does something and they used to think this way, and at the end of the project, they have learned themselves, well, that's not right. This is right. Oh, I had no idea. That's how a project should work. It should also work that when the people are finished with the project, they come back to the teacher overflowing with need to know. Or, we should do this. I used to teach college, and one time I was dealing with a senior class that was a bit arrogant. And they were leaving to go into full-time Christian work, and I felt that they needed to have a little more reality about themselves. So we worked one day in class and came up with a list of all the qualities of being a leader, from Timothy and Titus and Peter, and we made a list, and qualities of love, and I said, okay, let's make this sheet. So here are the qualities, and don't have it at all, a little bit, some, quite a bit, have it a lot. I said, now, I want you to give us 4 sheets like this with your name on it, and I want you to